Well, hi, and welcome to Unstoppable Mindset, where inclusion, diversity, and the unexpected meet. And I have to tell you a story about the unexpected. Our guest today is Rick Franzo, and Rick and I were originally supposed to talk to each other on June 22nd. And about 10 minutes into our conversation, suddenly everything disconnected. And as I was just telling Rick, what happened was that I had to, for another purpose, activate a VPN at the beginning of the day to do something. I forgot to deactivate it, didn't think it would be an issue, but it was an issue because 10 minutes into our conversation, the VPN cut us off. Go figure that. Anyway, so now we get to do it again, giving you the full scope of honesty in the world. So there we are. And Rick, welcome back, I got to say, to Unstoppable Mindset.
Thank you, Michael. Pleasure to be here.
Well, we'll just have to start over and have fun again. So that's what we'll do.
Down with that.
So tell me a little about you, starting out the young Rick and all that sort of stuff.
Young Rick. I don't know how much time do we have. So
go ahead.
I'll make it brief. I'll give you the Reader's Digest condensed version of it. So originally from the Poconos, still in the Poconos all my life. I have a wonderful wife of over 35 years, Debbie, and three wonderful grown children. And we're just living life and everything is great here. So watching the Poconos transform from a honeymoon area to a kind of a family staycation area that is close to New York City, Philadelphia, Baltimore, things like that. So plenty to do here in the Poconos. It's beautiful here in the mountains.
Yeah, it is really nice to be in the Poconos. What town are you actually closest to?
So I'm in Paradise Valley,
okay.
And I'm about 4 miles below south of Mount Pocono. So that's the heart of the Poconos.
We spent time, my wife and I, when we lived in Westfield, going through and being involved in the Poconos and had a lot of fun, and stayed in places in New York like the Sagamore Inn in St. George and had a lot of fun there as well.
Nice. Excellent. Yeah, we're close to a lot of different places for sure.
Yeah. We've always enjoyed our time in the New York area. Although my wife was a native of California and I was born in Chicago and moved to California when I was 5, so she would never let me call myself a native. That's okay. But still, she was a native and always wanted to be back in California. So after September 11th, we ended up having an opportunity to come back to be with Guide Dogs for the Blind and took it because, as I tell people, I was much more interested and excited in selling life than computer technology. And that's what we got to do.
Nice.
So it worked out pretty well.
I'd have to say.
Yeah. Well, so you are in the Poconos. Did you go to college or do any of those kinds of things?
Yeah, I went to East Stroudsburg University, a state university, and I worked as a radio disc jockey. So I was on the air on an AM station. It was a dawn to dusk station, WPCN, and I was on there for about 5 years, and I have about 10 years total of radio experience. My very first business was a mobile DJ business, and so I would do weddings and school dances, and one of the first gigs I had was at a local dairy farm for their Christmas party. And I didn't know what to expect. We were at a fire hall. So I hauled all my equipment and I went there and I started to play music and they started to serve dinner. It was about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the late afternoon, early evening in December. And all of the people there, it was a lot of farmers that were there. They ate and I thought I was playing music until 11. And by 6:30, everybody had eaten and they had maybe some presents and they all left. And I was like, is it me? But these are farmers. They're up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning milking the cows or, whatever it is farmers do. So I rode back, I drove back and I was fairly dejected. I said, oh my goodness, this is never going to work. But it was just the farmers. It wasn't me and, the whole dynamic of their lifestyle. So I had a very successful career as a mobile disc jockey as well. And that really translated into a lot of my public speaking that I do right now. So it's really interesting how, some things from the past kind of blend in with things that are happening in the now.
When you did radio, did you make recordings ever of what you did and go back and listen to them to see how you could improve or make your show better?
I did, and I don't have any of those recordings we did back in that day. Right, I sound like Charles Ingalls from Little House on the Prairie. So back in the old days, right, we did things on reel to reel.
Yeah.
We did things on cassette. So I would record myself on cassette and then re-listen and see where I had to improve. But I don't have any of those cassettes anymore. I don't know where they went, but maybe they oxidized. I don't know. But it was really interesting. We used to do commercials and things and the jingles. And it was really a great time, one of the best times in my life. And so glad I had the opportunity to do that. It was really a cool thing. And I still see some people that were in radio with me at the time, and I see them on a regular basis. So it is pretty neat.
I did radio in college and did a little bit of professional radio on a radio station up where my parents lived in Palmdale, but mostly did radio in college every Sunday night. My first quarter of doing radio was the last quarter of my freshman year. We had our station in a small room at the physical sciences building. And then over the summer, I think it was, someone broke in and stole the board and all of the technology, including the tape deck. So I then decided to go get into, and I had done a couple of them in my first quarter, but then I decided to start a show in the fall, 6 to 9 every Sunday, called the Radio Hall of Fame, and we played old radio shows. Nice. And I had to ride a bike over to the station with my Wallensack tape recorder. So we had a recorder to play the reel-to-reel tapes on because there was no longer any tape machine. And our engineer had built a temporary replacement board until we could afford to get new stuff. So it was an adventure doing that. And then the station moved over to the university commons from the physical sciences also because they needed the space. But it was an adventure lugging a tape machine for most of a year over to the place where we had the station to be able to connect it and do the show. So, a lot of adventures. I think my favorite story still is that my guide dog at the time, Squire, and I, after one of our shows, were standing outside, and a couple of our friends were with us, people from the station, and we were standing there, and one of them said, Squire is staring at a cat that is slowly slinking across the patio, the whole deck where we were. And the cat slowly came up, touched Squire on the nose, turned and ran. And Squire didn't move.
Oh my goodness.
It was so funny. He just sat there. It was a golden retriever and would not have done anything to that cat. Loved friends. So I'm sure he was going, what was that all about? But I did that show for, 5 years plus every Sunday. And, actually, it's almost 6 years. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, radio is fun. And I listened to myself. And actually, when I became program director, insisted that everyone listen to their own shows. And I was of the feeling and of the mind that if they listened, they'd probably improve because some of them really needed it. And I was so very amazed at how much they improved. Some of the people ended up going into radio full-time. Somebody went to work for NBC and some went into other kinds of endeavors where they did a lot of public speaking and so on. But listening to those recordings helped. I've got a few of mine. We got to interview one night Dawes Butler, who is the guy, the voice of Huckleberry Hound and Yogi Bear, and did a lot of stuff with Stan Freberg.
Wow.
And he came down and spent 3 hours with us, and that was a lot of fun. And I still have the reel with that on it. I have to dig it out.
Pretty cool. That's pretty neat. The people that you meet, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It was a lot of fun.
Definitely. I don't think I interviewed anybody that was no, nobody that was really famous. I met famous people here in the Poconos because they would come here either on vacation. The boxers used to come here before big fights and train at some of the resorts up here. So we had like Sugar Ray Leonard
Mm.
and Lennox Lewis, and I met them, and so it was pretty neat.
I met Sugar Ray Leonard at a speech he gave for a company I worked for. He came in and did a motivational speech. And it was okay as I think back on it, but I got to meet him and when they took pictures and all that stuff. So it was kind of fun.
Yeah, very
But
cool.
yeah. So you went off to college. What'd you get a degree in?
So I went to college. I never got my degree. I got a full-time job in radio. So
There
I
you
was
go.
a communications major. So I said, what do I need college for? Right? Real smart there. And so I left college, went and did a radio career and did my my mobile DJ business. And then I started a family and just started to work in the management and the grocery industry. And that's really where I made my living, was being a buyer and a person that was in charge of people in the grocery industry. But I also changed a little bit. I did some work in corrections. I was a corrections officer in a prison, and I worked at that same university as a buyer in the bookstore for 11 years before I started my own business.
So being the big time radio personality that you were, did Debbie fall in love with you after hearing you on the air and she decided to come meet you or what?
No, it wasn't that.
What a great story that would be, though, wouldn't it?
That would be a great story. No, no, we met actually through her sister, and so it was a radio station event. It was an air band contest at the college, and she was there, and we had met, and we started to date, and the rest is history. That was 1985.
She didn't keep calling you up and say, "Play Misty for me" or anything like that?
No, we weren't quite that evolved, I think.
Oh,
Nothing like that. But it was.
Karen and I finally watched that movie with Clint Eastwood. It was pretty interesting.
Nice. There's a lot of good Clint Eastwood movies.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool, though. Since 1985, we got married in 1982.
Okay.
And unfortunately lost her just last November. But, she's around watching. And if I screw up, I'm going to hear about it, I'm sure.
Well, you better watch your P's and Q's.
That's exactly right. 40 years of memories and marriage, of course.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. But yeah, the DJ was fun and things like that. But, we moved on and did different things. So when I worked at the college, it was time to, do something for myself. So I decided to start my own business.
So you went into the grocery business and all that and were there. And so when did you go off on your own?
So I was a baker, and then I went into management, and then I was a seafood buyer, and then I was a trainer and a coach for new managers. And that was really a great evolution. And then just went to do buying in the bookstore for the college and worked there for 11 years. So then I just decided that the time was right to follow my passion and really monetize what I like to do, which was help people. And so I bought a franchise and became a business coach.
When did that start?
2018.
All right. So you've only actually been in your own business as such for 5 years, but obviously a lot of coaching experience and all that before then.
Right. Definitely.
And what you didn't know, Debbie taught you.
No doubt.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt. But I cut my teeth, so to speak, in the brain tumor community when I was kind of really, after my surgery, got involved with people that were in similar situations than I was, and started to really connect with them and kind of mentor them a little bit, and got part of that community.
Well, tell us a little bit about that, because you've actually had several bouts with brain tumors and so on over the years.
Yeah, and never cancer. I want to make that clear. But because of my experience in corrections, I did security at a ski mountain here in the Poconos. And at the end of the season, we had a barbecue at one of the people's houses. And I was playing horseshoes, and I lost all strength and coordination in the right side of my body out of nowhere. Didn't know what was happening. So it scared me enough for me to go to my doctor. I went to my doctor. He did some physical tests and said, yeah, you've got some weakness on your right side. We'll send you for an MRI. So I went for the MRI, and they said, you should know in about a week or so. And they called me the next day at work, and they said, Mr. Franzo, we usually don't make this type of call, but you have an enormous brain tumor, and we have a neurosurgeon from a large hospital in the area here today. You have a 1:00 appointment. We'll see you then. Wow. And I just took the phone. I was like, well, I'm dead. I don't know anything about brain tumors. I just thought they were all cancer. And so I was finished. So I made the drive home and told my wife, and we went to the doctor, and they said, the brain tumor that you have is enormous. We don't believe it's cancer. It would have killed you a long time before, but you have about 2 weeks to live, because we feel that the pressure is what's going to kill you. So they put me on medication and anti-seizure medicine, and they said, we're going to do surgery in 3 weeks or less. And in less than 3 weeks, I had 10.5 hours of surgery. And a spoiler alert, I lived, but they couldn't see.
I was wondering if we were doing this sort of remotely.
That would be kind of surreal, right? The Matrix. But they couldn't save my skull, so a third of my skull was all titanium. And I came out paralyzed from the waist down. The collateral damage from my quote unquote benign brain tumor and the pressure. So I spent 8 days in the hospital, and I went to rehab, and my goal was to walk out of there, and nobody believed it because it looked impossible. But I became laser focused, and very, very humbled and lucky and blessed that things connected. And through the hard work of the therapist, in 6.5 weeks, I walked out of there with leg braces and a walker, but I walked out.
Yeah. Still, that's really the important thing. And it's interesting. We so often just underestimate the power of what our brain can do. And you were focused, and you were intent on doing it. I keep flashing back to Christopher Reeves, who always said, I'll walk again someday. The only difference was you had a specific plan, and he raised funds, and his journey wasn't able to be fulfilled, but you were so focused that you obviously brought it about. And I'm sure that had a lot to do with you walking again.
I think mindset had a lot to do with it. I think also, just things connecting. We know so little about the brain. It's almost absurd. So, I appreciated that nobody could tell me if, I was going to walk again or not. There's people that have, such traumatic injuries, no matter how much they try, and how positive their mindset is, they're not going to walk again. But, it's all about, having that hope, right? Hope is a real thing. It's tangible. You can wrap your arms around it. And hope doesn't always mean that you're going to survive, but hope actually gets you to that next level. And maybe it'll help somebody else that's in a similar situation. So hope is absolutely a real thing, and not false hope or toxic hope or, over positive hope or anything else, just straight up hope.
Well, and clearly that worked. So when did you have the initial brain tumor surgery?
I had the brain tumor surgery in June of 2009.
Okay. And you have had to deal with that since also, haven't you?
Yes. I got diagnosed with a second brain tumor in 2011. That's still there. And then another type of brain tumor in 2017. And the one that was in 2011, they marked as residual, and it's been behaving itself. The newer one, still not cancer, but made me deaf in my right ear, took my balance away, so I was walking and falling. And so I had radiation on that in 2017. And then as I started my business, I was doing outpatient physical therapy so that I didn't fall every time I was walking. So much of the time I'll use a cane when I'm out. especially in somewhere where I'm not really familiar. But other than that, I drive and live a fairly normal life.
Well, it's interesting. Do they have an explanation as to why you are getting so many tumors? And although I'm certainly grateful for it personally, why they're not cancerous?
There's no explanation. They don't know if it's hereditary. Nobody else in my family has had it. There's no known cause for brain tumors. There's no effective screening for brain tumors and brain cancer. There is 130 different types of brain tumors and brain cancer. So making accurate diagnoses are it's very, very difficult. So they call it an orphan disease, but almost 800,000 people in the United States live with, just in the United States, live with a primary brain tumor. That's a tumor that starts in your brain and stays there. Not talking about other tumors that metastasize to the brain, which,
Sure.
the ones that are most common that do that are lung and breast cancer. They have the most propensity to go to the brain.
Well, so my explanation is as good as any. Is it's just an attention-getting device on your part, right?
Well, it's a kind of get out of jail free card, right?
Yeah.
Little tumor humor never
Yeah,
hurt.
I get it.
But one of the best things is being able to speak and bring awareness and support people and just be part of that community. It's a club that nobody wants to be a part of.
Yeah. Well, and it so greatly enhances you because it helps you, since you clearly have chosen to do it, tell stories about it, and you use it to more make your life something that people can relate to. Although we certainly don't want people to have brain tumors, but still, you dealt with it, and you have continued to not only live with it, which is kind of negative, but overcome it and move forward, which is really the important thing. So how are you involved in the whole issue of the world of people with brain tumors today? Because I know you're doing a lot more. You are part of a big Facebook group, and what else do you do with that?
Yeah, I founded a Facebook group called Brain Tumor Talk, and it is now the largest general brain tumor support group on social media on the planet. There's over 15,000 people from about 50 countries, give or take. I wrote a book. I do public speaking. I had a radio show for 4 years from the college that I worked at called Brain Tumor Talk Worldwide Radio Show. Just really humbled that I'm able to be a mentor for the American Brain Tumor Association in Chicago, and mentor other people that have brain tumors. So, recovery happened because it just did. But, what I did with everything else was a choice. And, being the CEO of my own corporation and, doing something that I love every day, that's a choice. And, if somebody tells you can't do something, and look at you, I'm speaking to the choir, but, absolutely that isn't true.
Yeah. And I think all of us face challenges, and it's always a question of how we decide to deal with the challenges. It's like anything. And you clearly have made it an extremely positive thing that is worth talking about, and clearly is worth talking about. And it helps you. I assume you go in regularly to get checkups to make sure that nothing else is happening with the tumors.
Yeah, I go every 2 years to make sure that everything up there is behaving itself. And so far, so good.
So they grow slowly.
Yeah, they're slow growers. So again, there's no reason why I get them. There's no reason why anybody gets a brain tumor. We just don't know what the cause is.
So the one that you got in 2011, has it grown, or does it grow at all, or is it just
Nope, it's
there?
stable. It's just kind of sitting there.
It's just kind of sitting there.
Yeah, which is, that unwanted neighbor in your head. You know what I mean? We can't evict it. So we do what we got to do with it. So it's not causing any kind of, drama or trauma in my head. So
could they remove it?
I'm sure that they could, but that isn't really an option. It's not harming anything. So
it's not adding value.
No. And
remove it.
As we get older, these types of tumors tend to calcify. So maybe it'll just calcify and go away. It's not very large. So we'll see what happens.
Being blind my whole life, I have developed cataracts on my eye lenses and so on. And I
Really?
asked a doctor once, it just happens because of no use, right? And I asked an ophthalmologist once, should we remove them? And he said, well, we could. I'm not sure that there would be any value in doing it because it's not going to make you see, which I didn't think that it would, but I
Right.
didn't know whether there was any value in it. Actually, what brought the discussion up was because when I get eye exams, in order for them to look at the retina, for normal people, they can do it by dilating the lens and or the eye and so on, and they can see through the lens. But with cataracts, they can't. So they actually have to do an ultrasound of my eyes in order to see what's going on at the back.
Interesting.
And so they do, and it's fascinating. It's different. Certainly doesn't hurt, but it's different. I'm glad they have the technology to be able to do those kinds of things.
Absolutely. You don't realize what you have until you pretty much lose it. Again, you've been through so many things, but so many other people have. And a lot of times people say, well, I haven't had it as bad as you, Rick, but it's personal to them. So there's not any kind of levels. Nobody has it any better or worse than I do, or you do,
Yeah,
or anybody else. It's personal to whoever it is that is dealing with it. And it just is, what you do with what you got.
that's right. And there's no reason not to do anything you want with what you got.
Right, exactly. I don't lead off with the brain tumor card,
Yeah.
but it is part of my story. It isn't. It doesn't define me, but it is part of what I do. And a lot of the coaching that I do, the business coaching, is almost like the therapy. So the therapist couldn't sit up or help me sit up. They couldn't walk for me, but they had to show me the strategy so that I was able to go and do it for myself. And that's very similar to what I do as a business coach. I see things from, the outside looking in, where the therapist did as well. And all we have to do is give the strategies. And so long as somebody's coachable, they'll move on it.
And that's really the key is that they need to be able to be coachable, which means they need to be willing to deal with it.
Yeah, and not have somebody solve their problems for them. Like I said, the therapist couldn't walk for me. I can't do the business for the people who I coach. They're the experts in their business. I'm the expert at seeing some maybe gaps or blind spots that they have so that they can level up. And most of the time, it's just a slight adjustment and maybe just a little bit of different mindset. And some things maybe that they aren't aware of, that it's hard to see the forest through the trees when you're right in the middle of things. So
Yeah.
they get through the chaos of a working day or a year, and they don't know what to do.
What would you say the difference is between a coach and a therapist? Because they are two different kinds of positions.
Well, if this was COVID, I would say nothing, because there were so many people. It was a rough time for everybody. I don't have the wherewithal to be a therapist. I'm a very good listener, but other than that, I think that I can't give strategies except on things that I know. Therapists are very good listeners, but they have that specialized training. So it's kind of same circus, different tent. But what I do is I craft strategies. Therapists craft strategies. I went to a neuropsychologist because I was having panic attacks and I didn't know how to deal with it. And it was really because of my brain injury. And he gave me strategy specific to people with brain injuries. And so I'm able to do that with people that are in business. And so it's kind of similar, but I'm not a therapist. I'm not a mentor. I'm simply a coach, and that's enough.
Yeah, what I have been told by some is that what a coach does is not solve problems, but he helps the person actually seek out and identify the challenges and helps them to move to discover what the solutions are for themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In a nutshell, that's exactly what I do. I can't solve their problems because, if I'm there to go and help them identify the problems. But again, the therapist couldn't walk for me. I can't go and swing a hammer or tell them how to do something. I can suggest things, but really, I'm there to help them, almost like a sports coach, right?
Mhm.
So Michael Jordan had a coach. The coach didn't go and shoot the baskets, but he would identify some things that maybe could help them to be more effective. And that's the same thing that we do.
Do you play horseshoes anymore?
I do.
Oh,
I
good.
do. I have horseshoe pits here. I'm not good, and I was
That's
never,
okay.
but I do play horseshoes. Yes.
But at least you're able to go out and have fun and do that some more.
Yeah. It's been too hot, so I
Yeah.
haven't really played this year so much, but because the heat really affects me.
Yeah, it's way too hot to be outside for any of us, given
I think so.
mid 90s and high 90s. And then you got places like
It's,
poor Phoenix, which has just
ugh,
done its 19th day over 110.
I can't even. Not for
Yeah.
me, even though it's
No.
a dry heat.
Yeah, even though it is a dry, it's really hot. It's just kind of crazy. How
Absolutely.
how do you think the whole experience with brain tumors and also now with the Facebook page and getting to interact with so many other people, how has all that affected you as a coach?
I think it caused me to have more empathy. I think that the whole experience did. So, if I didn't go through what I went through in 2009, I probably wouldn't be a coach. And if I was, I wouldn't be a very good coach because I feel that I really lacked empathy, and I feel that that's the greatest gift that this gave me was that sense of empathy. So I feel that it helps me to be more present, more effective, and more real with people.
I know for me, I try to be empathetic. And if I get messages from people that I'm not, then I always need to go back and look at that because I think it is very important to be empathetic. That doesn't mean that you necessarily agree, but you can certainly understand where people are coming from and you can help and interact with them and approach them where they are as opposed to where you think they ought to be.
Exactly. I mean, and that's the whole, uh, you know, basis of what I do is it's not my plan, right? I'm not a consultant. I meet them where they are, and that's where we start to work. And there's no one size fits all. We kind of take it as it is, and let it flow and let it go, and craft strategy based on because everybody's different, right? Everybody has different heredity, background. They have different role models, different experiences, things like that. So we have to kind of dig in and find out where they are and where they want to be and just
Yeah.
help them to get there from point A to point B. And sometimes they're just stuck and we help them to get unstuck.
So you mentioned empathy. What are some other important traits or qualities that a good coach should have?
Patience, definitely patience, and be a good listener, not just to listen to respond, but again, listen to understand. And absolutely don't go in with any kind of preconceived notions or just really listen to what it is that people are saying and kind of take it from there. If we listen and give somebody an opportunity to speak, they're going to tell you everything that really you need to know to help them.
Yeah. And I have found that even in sales, and as you may know, and listeners here know, I've been in sales most all of my adult life, and both in terms of selling high tech, but even philosophy and so on. All we can do ultimately is really present things to people. They need to learn to accept it or decide to think about accepting it. And I believe what my best sales guy ever said to me, which is the only thing I can sell is myself and my word, and all the rest is stuff. So selling products and all that, that's stuff. That's not really selling because the customer needs to want to buy it, but it also has to be the right product. And part of what I need to do, as he always put it, is sell the right thing or tell them that we can't do it, which is always a great way to establish a better relationship, except with your bosses, but it's still the best way to go.
It is right. You have that that mantra that you're going to do the right thing for people for sure. And it's like Simon Sinek says, people are going to buy from who they like and who they trust. And we're not just selling things, we're not selling services or products or widgets or anything else. We're really selling the benefits of what it is and how it can help them specifically. We're selling a transformation, whatever that is, whether it's pasta or whether it's some sort of sales process.
Yeah. And I think that it's important to recognize that it's really all about trust, first and foremost. And whatever we do, and it's the same with you as a coach, it's all about trust. People aren't going to listen to you if they can't find that they can trust you, which gets back to the empathy thing again in part, and just you as a listener establishing a relationship with them.
It's really transformative because I actually choose the people that I work with. So as much as they, kind of screen me, I screen them to make sure that we're a good fit. If I'm going to be dealing with that company or that person, or we're going to be interacting and building a relationship for a year or more, I have to make sure that when I get up in the morning, I say, well, you know what, this is going to be a great day. I'm meeting with Michael, not what
Him
fresh
again.
I had today. It's Michael, 8 o'clock. Great. Yeah. I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I better have a little Irish up my coffee a little bit. So, I have that latitude that I can really be choosy on who I deal with, and they can as well. And every one of my clients and referral partners and people that I network with and people that I surround myself with, I'm very fortunate to have all of them.
I think you hit it right on the head, though. It's all a matter of choice. And no matter who you're working with, you have the ability to choose how you deal with that situation, which is really the way it ought to be. And we should choose to be more positive. And it's unfortunate that so often too many people just look at only the negative side of things, which gets very frustrating after a while.
Does, but sometimes people can't pick themselves up by their own bootstraps, and it is a choice, but sometimes circumstances kind of prevent that from happening, and I can be empathetic to that too. And it's really I'm very non-judgmental about that, where before I was, what are you doing? You can do this and everything else. Maybe they can't.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they just can't.
Or maybe they haven't discovered something that they need to discover and to be able to do it. And then, of course, that's your job to help them see if there's something to discover.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes there isn't.
And sometimes there isn't, which is also okay.
It's okay.
We need to understand that should be okay to believe that and recognize that.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
What do you do to help or to work with people who have a hard time achieving their goals? We all hear about setting goals and deciding what we're going to do and set a goal to do this and so on. But a lot of people have a lot of challenges achieving goals. So how do you help people like that?
I really kind of dig in and find out, what makes them, right? To establish what their need is and, how they actually learn. So, I try to keep things, again, it's almost cliche, like I'm explaining to a fifth grader, not to talk down to anybody, but to make sure that my message is being received clearly and without so much collateral stuff that's going on. So I break it down and I do it, I compartmentalize things and structure it so that almost in a SMART goal way. So it's specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time bound, so that we have really good strategy, not just throwing up things against the wall and seeing what sticks. And if we have a process, then that's half the battle right there. But it's a process that fits them, not a cookie cutter, one size fits all. Because everybody has different businesses, they have different backgrounds, they have different structure for their business, different personalities, especially. So we really have to go and understand, first and foremost, how to communicate with them, how to go and build that relationship, and how to listen to what it is they really want and need, and what the difference is between those two.
I'm sorry. And the neat and exciting thing about that is that you get to learn as you go along, because you meet these people who may have experiences that are different from you, and they help you grow.
Every day. Every day. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't learn something new.
I have always felt doing this podcast that if I'm not learning at least as much as other people learn, then I'm not doing my job. And I don't know what I'm going to learn. I don't know what happens on every interview. And that's what makes it fun. It's all about, they're not interviews, they're conversations, but it's so much fun. And I want to learn and get to learn so much. It's really a great blessing to me as far as I'm concerned.
But it's all about building relationships. When we first spoke, this is like the third time that we're speaking. The first time you made a reference to Young Frankenstein, a movie from what?
No. Frankenstein.
1975, right?
Yeah.
And I got the reference immediately. Said, okay, we're good.
That's Frederick Frankenstein.
Yes. Oh my gosh. One of the greats. So, it's always good to really kind of establish that relationship and relate. And it's no different in sales than it is from real life, right? We relate, we establish the need. Sometimes we're helping people. We want to advance that solution that's custom for them. And then, develop that commitment. It's almost like dating a little bit, but it's been 38 years since I went out on a first date. So I don't know what that's like anymore, but I imagine from what I hear that that's probably what it's like.
I know what it was like when I went out on my first date with Karen, who I married. But I think, again, that's my experience and her experience. She was and has always been in a wheelchair. I'm blind, and that's a different experience than people who aren't blind or not in wheelchairs get exposed to. And we all have different experiences, and that's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But we grow by really learning about other people's experiences where we can. And there's so much value in doing that. I was talking with someone earlier today. We were just discussing the whole topic of crisis management. And she was discussing the whole idea that, in fact, a lot of times people become involved in crises with other people because they just don't take the time to choose to understand or try to learn to understand.
True.
Which is a very fascinating and interesting and relevant way to put it.
During the pandemic, it was really interesting because social media is an outlet where people feel that maybe other people don't see it, or that they can just kind of let their hair down, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But people in the community that I had considered to be pillars or strong leaders, they were losing it on social media. And it was really interesting and a little bit unnerving to see some of the people that were, supposed to be leaders or, decision makers and things like that absolutely lost it during the pandemic. So, even if you do, right, people are watching you. And so it was really important for that front facing to be calm and, make sure that you were steady, because you're not going to be followed or people aren't going to respond to you if you seem like you're in chaos, in a time of chaos.
It really does make life very difficult when you start to see these people, as you say, who just kind of become unhinged. And you wonder, I really didn't know this person? What's the deal? What's going on here? And I agree. There were so many disappointing things that happened during the pandemic. And the reality is, of course, there's so many things that we don't have control over, and we don't learn how to deal with that. We don't learn to deal with just what we have control over and just leave the rest alone. We think we should be able to control everything. And so one of the things I think about all those people on social media, not during the pandemic, was they thought they had control over everything. And then suddenly it turns out, no, you didn't.
Nope. Exactly. And, it was a very, very humbling moment just to see some of these people that, were leaders in their industry or leaders in the community that they really didn't have the wherewithal to handle it. And so it was really important for everybody to really join together and try to figure out strategies so that we didn't falter during that time. And the biggest thing that I did was make sure that I stayed close to my network. And that was very important because we're not built as human beings to do any of this alone. We're very, communal.
And unfortunately, so often during the pandemic, people wouldn't come together unless it was just within their network, but they wouldn't come together overall. I haven't seen that kind of behavior since September 11th, when after September 11th, we were so unified for a little while. Then things and cracks started to appear, but we were very unified for a while. And I really wish that some of our leaders had taken more advantage of trying to keep that going, but they didn't.
Amen. Yeah. It took something that devastating to bring us all together, and still there was really no stickability to it. After a while, you're right, it started to have cracks and then it started to crumble. And look at where we're now.
And it should have been able to stay together, but people wouldn't do that, which is unfortunate.
No, everybody has their agendas, and that's just the way that it goes.
So you deal with a lot of different kinds of things and a lot of challenges and so on. How do you stay motivated as a coach?
I remember where I came from, and I use that five rule, where if it's not going to matter in 5 years, then don't give it even 5 minutes more of thought. I actually should be dead. So, again, singing to the choir. So every day is really a gift. And, I try not to take anything for granted. And I slip, and, I find myself being involved in petty things or things that really don't matter. And again, that's just kind of how we're built. But I have to have the wherewithal to bring myself out of it and remember that, we can be bigger than that.
Yeah. And we do have the ability to be bigger than that, and should. And when we realize that, then we tend to be a little bit more motivated to move on.
Definitely. And to be humble. It's tough for somebody in business to say they don't know something. And it's tough for anybody to say that they don't know something. I'm not afraid to say, I'm kind of lost here, help me. And before, I had too much pride and ego to do that. But for me to recover, I had to take pride and ego, and I had to kind of toss it. They're overrated. I had to be coachable to be a coach.
There you go. It's, again, a journey. It's a learning experience. And you had to be willing to learn and grow.
Yep.
It is such an awesome thing to hear you talk about these things and to see what you're doing. You hold yourself accountable really well. And yeah, you do. Like anyone, sometimes things happen. But when you're dealing with your clients, obviously there are a lot of times when you establish enough of a relationship where you need to hold them accountable for something. And how do you do that while at the same time being compassionate and supportive to them?
That's kind of a fine line, right? So I don't tell them what to do, right? But we'll look at things like what their goals are and what their key performance indicators are. And if they're not getting there, we have to kind of say, what is it that you want, right? It all comes down to the numbers in the end, but we don't even have to get there half of the time. We really, part of the whole dynamic of what I do is the accountability piece. And really, people want to be held accountable. They just aren't really able to hold themselves accountable. So I don't make it an attack. I don't make it like some sort of an intervention. It's absolutely, we're on the same team. I don't work for my clients. I work with my clients. I'm a part of their team. And I'm just as invested in their business as they are.
And that's really the way it should be. I've always felt that when I have people who work for me and that I work with, it's all a matter of having a team. And I always tell people my job is to help us figure out ways that I can add value to what you do to make you successful. And I think that it goes beyond that in terms of like what you're doing, because you want to make them successful. It helps make you successful, but everybody learns and grows. And it's the whole thing again of there's no I in team. My favorite book, one of my favorite books, but my favorite book on the whole subject of team building and so on is The Five Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Have you ever read it?
I haven't.
It's a great little book. It's a parable mostly. And it talks about, well, the whole premise is it's a company that's having a lot of problems. They bring in a new CEO, and she works to create the executive team into a real team because they weren't. And it goes through a lot of the discussions about what makes a good team. And the most basic thing that is talked about is the whole concept of accountability, and that everyone needs to buy into accountability and needs to not only be willing to hold other people accountable, but be held accountable themselves. And it is important that we recognize that it's okay for others on our team to help hold us accountable, because if they're doing it for the right reason, it's a very positive thing.
Yep, absolutely. And it helps to create a better culture in that organization as well.
Yeah. But accountability can be such a wonderful thing. And, you know, for me, and I joke about it with the memory of my wife, and saying, if I do something wrong, I'm going to hear about it. If I don't hear about it from any other way, I'm going to hear about it from my own conscience. I've got 40 years of memories and 73 years of life that taught me how I really ought to be and how I really ought to behave. And if I can't do that, then there's something really wrong with me.
That mic drop right there. Amen.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And but I do know that she's up there, and wherever she is, she's monitoring me. So far, I guess I've been doing okay.
I guess.
But you know, we do cope, and we move on and do what we need to do.
Absolutely.
So you've got 3 grown children. Any grandkids?
One grandson. He's 14, who is very good at beating me in chess online. I haven't won against him yet. I think we've played about 25 times. I can't beat the kid. I don't know.
It's a goal.
It's a goal. He's far more skilled. So every time he's like, "You want to play again?" Yes. So we'll play for an hour, and I'm like, "All right, I think that I've had my fill of defeat for today. We'll catch you next week."
Have you asked him yet what his secret is?
I haven't. I don't want to know what his secret is.
Well, then you could win.
No, I don't. I want to get there on my own. I don't want to go. There's no cheat codes here.
No. Not cheat codes, just secret of his skill.
Oh, he practices. He plays all the time. He's definitely committed to what he does. So incredible young man.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yep.
And so does he live near you?
No.
Well, I'm probably not.
No, all my kids live out west. I live here. Their lives took them out to the West Coast and that part of the country, and that we always encourage them to do as they want to do, and they all drove across themselves to get to where they wanted to go, and they all lead very, very successful lives, and we're very, very proud of them. We talk to them all the time.
That's cool. So you have great relationships, and that's as good as it gets.
And we visit each other, so it's all good. It's very nice.
So you wrote a book, How Horseshoes Saved My Life.
Yeah.
Are you looking and thinking about writing any other books?
I'm writing another book right now, and it's a little bit of part 2 of How Horseshoes Saved My Life, because it was a tale of 2 brain tumors, and now there's 3, and really blending in some of the business lessons that I've learned and some servant leadership aspects to it. So it's going to be, I don't have a name for it yet, but it's going to be a good book. It'll be a short book like the first one. It'll be an easy read, and very relatable for everybody. And you don't have to have a brain tumor or a disability to understand what it is. And so that's going to be what it is. I don't have a date for it yet. It's TBD. I've been kind of drawn another direction, so I haven't put the time into it that I wanted to. But maybe by the end of the summer, I'll be a little farther along than I am now.
Now, your first book, did you self-publish or did a publisher do it?
I self-published it.
Okay. And the second one will probably be the same way.
It will.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Well, that's something, I think we all have stories in us, and self-publishing has come along that makes it so much easier to be able to write and publish a book if we get to the discipline of doing it, or maybe work with someone else to do it. But the fact is that I would love to see more people tell their stories. And that's one of the things that we try to do on Unstoppable Mindset, is at least talk about the stories.
No, what an incredible platform that you have, right?
Well, it's a lot of fun, and it definitely keeps us busy, and at least in the air conditioning during the heat.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you seem to pump out a podcast a week, if not more.
We're doing 2 a week now, which is really pretty. Yeah, which is really pretty cool, and definitely enjoying it. And I enjoy so much getting to meet so many people with diverse backgrounds and diverse stories to tell. And people always say, well, who's your audience? And I just keep saying the audience is anyone and everyone. It's a very diverse audience. We're not dealing with a specific agenda. We really want to give people the opportunity to tell stories, and that's what makes it so much fun to do.
Very cool.
So I love it. I can't complain a lot unless I want to work at it, and nobody listens. So there you go. Well, I'm glad that you're doing another book, and the coaching is going well. Do you coach people all over the world or all over the United States?
All over the United States. And so not all over the world yet, but we have coaches that are in 13 or 15 other countries. And so we have a pretty broad network, and what a bunch of really great coaches we have. So definitely something to learn. We usually all get together once a year. We got together in Dallas last year, and it was a great experience. So
how many of you are there?
About 150, give or take a coach or two.
Wow.
Domestically and internationally.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you said it's a company, I guess everyone has their own franchise within the company.
Right. So I have my own corporation, and, we all run our business as we would. I kind of, there are some things that we have to do that are universal, like our strategic mindset, but really we have the latitude and the flexibility to, kind of run our company the way that we want to, and use the materials and the coaching that we get, how it serves our clients best.
Yeah. And again, that's the neat thing. You've got 150 or so people who have all these diverse backgrounds that can help teach you, and that you can help teach as well, which really is a wonderful opportunity and set of tools to take advantage of. Definitely.
No, it was very fortunate that I ran across the growth coach, and I encourage other people to really look into the franchise model, because it's really a perfect model. You're in business for yourself, not by yourself. You don't have to make the mistakes or reinvent the wheel. They have everything really structured and figured out. You just have to commit to making it happen for you. That's ultimately the real issue anyway, right? It sure is.
Yeah. Well, if people want to reach out to you, how do they do that?
They can go and they can reach out. My website is thegrowthcoachpoconos.com. And all my information is on there, my phone number, my email, and everything else. If you have a brain tumor, you can check it out on Facebook. It's called Brain Tumor Talk, and you just have to answer some screening questions. And you can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn.
What's your LinkedIn name?
Same, Rick Franzo.
Rick Franzo.
Yep, Rick Franzo.
Franzo.
You got it.
So there you go. And Rick is R-I-C-K. I got that part.
Yeah, you got that part.
It's not Igor, it's Igor.
Igor.
Well, I really have enjoyed this, and we got through it this time, which is great.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely. I was waiting for the next glitch, but didn't happen. So
Now I had faith this time. We don't
yeah,
have the VPN running, so I had full faith that we were going to do fine and that nothing was going to stop it. So
your faith
it,
got us through.
or something. I hope so. I like to think so anyway. But I really appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate you listening out there. And I'd love to hear from you. I'm sure Rick would love to hear from you. If you need a coach or just want to chat in any way, feel free to reach out to Rick. I'd love to hear your thoughts about today. Please feel free to email me at Michael, Michaelhi at accessibe, accessibe.com, or go to our podcast page, www.michaelhingson.com/podcast, and it's michaelhingson.com/podcast. If you would please give us a 5-star rating, I would appreciate it. Rick would appreciate it. We love hearing your thoughts, so don't hesitate to give them. And if you know someone else who you think we ought to have as a guest on Unstoppable Mindset, please reach out to me and provide introductions. Rick, same to you. We're always looking for more guests. So if you think any of the people from Growth Coach who ought to come on are able to do that, would love that as well. But I want to thank you once more for being here and for making this a delightful day for us.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure and an honor, and I'm humbled to be here today. Thank you so much, Michael.